All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Kingdom Dynamics. This is Dr. Bill with World Bible School Media, and please, as you get on here, and I'll try to remind you as we go along to click like and click share so that you can watch tonight's broadcast. My guest tonight back with me is Bishop Robin Michael Beach. And we're kind of making up for something we kind of had to postpone and do a part one on, and so we're doing the part two. But good evening, sir. How are you?
I'm doing well, Dr. Bill. Thank you. I appreciate you guys being able to see you and be with you guys tonight, and it's an honor to be here. I hope that we can share some things tonight that's going to bless everyone and encourage everyone and exhort and edify and lift some folks up this evening. I think when we talk about this context of sonship that we're going to be delving into somewhat tonight, I believe it's a central and foundational theme in all of Scripture. And as we begin to explore the facets and the multifaceted arena that sonship entails, I think that we're going to find out that how deep and how wide and how broad the love of Abba truly is for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, welcome everybody, and already people are just popping in. We appreciate all of you so very, very much. Thank you for watching. And tonight, as we're talking about the recognition of sonship, this is an important topic, and it's always important to talk about sonship. And so we're continuing our discussion on this concept. And the truth is, it remains crucial for us to approach this with a renewed viewpoint as we dive further into defining this revelation. And this is a revelation. So we're going to take a little bit deeper journey into the book of Psalm. We were looking at Psalm 1 verse 2 last time, but we're going into the Passion Translation, just kind of touch on this a little further. And so here is Psalm chapter 1 verse 2 in the Passion Translation. His passion, there we go, right off the bat. His passion is to remain true to the word of I am, meditating day and night on the true revelation of light. So it's been a while, but as best you can, just kind of bring us into this. And I'm not necessarily saying go back and redo part one, but bring us into this so that we can get this material done tonight. So God bless you, everybody.
Yes, Psalm chapter 1 is very foundational, Dr. Bill, I believe, in the idea of what it's imparting to us. And so often, as we find, and you and I have discussed, Dr. Bill, in the descriptive language of Scripture and the hyperbolic and metaphorical, allegorical meanings that lie in the abstract truths of reality, we see these pictures that are given to us of what we could call natural occurrence that reveals spiritual truth to us. And the depth of Psalm chapter 1 is what it really is talking about. And the entire psalm and what it's introducing to us in all 150 psalms is the journey that we know of as sonship and that journey of recognition. One of the things, Dr. Bill, that you and I had talked about was, for instance, when Jesus crosses the Jordan River, the very first thing after he is baptized by John the Baptizer, the very first thing that happens to him is recognition. We see that the heavens open, a voice comes out of heaven. This is, Dr. Bill, even theologically, is the foundation that allows him to say, I am. The this is that comes out of heaven is always the voice, the affirmation, the confirmation, the recognition that gives us empowerment to go about whatever endeavor it is. This was before, Dr. Bill, that Jesus Christ had ever done a single miracle. This is before he had ever recruited one disciple. Before any of these, the wedding at Cana, before any of these things had happened, recognition from Abba was what placed him on the solid footing of every ministerial endeavor, if you will, that happened after that. And I think that the blueprint that we see in this is the very same blueprint that associatively, if we understand what Psalm 1 is talking about, it's why when I began to write it and we'll begin to talk about it so definitively in much of our discipleship classes and groups, it's Psalm 1 is what I call the righteous one, the recognized son. And so recognition of sonship or recognition of origin, where we came from, is that, Dr. Bill, which precludes everything and forms literally the contextual foundation from which we are able to live, move, and have our being. That's what Paul was telling the Athenians in Acts chapter 17. In him we live, move, and have our being. That in him is the same as saying out of him also. In him, through him, for him, by him, to him. Romans 11:36, exist all things. So recognition is a key element of not only what empowers us, but it's what defines us as disciples of Jesus Christ.
Yeah. And I think there has to be a defining. I love what you said in the beginning about eternal truth, that, you know, one of the things that I often have tried to convince people of is that there is a truth greater than the truth they've always known, and also that there is a truth greater than what they can perceive by what they see, hear, and touch as far as the natural perceptions, because
Yes.
there is a truth that supersedes all truth, and that's a supernatural truth. It's an
Yes.
eternal truth, and it has really very little to do with the natural unless we bring that truth into the natural so that it can impact our natural.
Yes, sir.
So, yeah, and you know, you had stated that Psalm chapter 1 is a contrasting parallelism,
Yes.
revealing the righteous one who is the recognized son, compared to the fallen one gone astray from the course of life, prepared for the son by the master creator Yahweh. So. I know we have some points to break down and getting into the translation, the Illumination Translation, and so on. But just take us further in this, if you would.
Yes, sir. One of the things that I think that we need to see here in Psalm 1, 2, and I love the way that Brian, Dr. Simmons, Passion Translation, translated this when he said his passion is to remain true to the word of I am. His passion is to remain true to the word of I am, meditating day and night on the true revelation of light. So what we see here, Dr. Bill, is a allegorical picture in Psalm 1 of, let's picture Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and earth, and God said, let there be light. The initiation of creation is the entrance of light. And as the Psalms truly tell us, and the Proverbs tell us too, is that at the entrance of thy word brings light. John chapter 1, verse 4, in him was life, and life was the light of men. So when we talk about this light, Dr. Bill, we're talking about not only, we have to understand the revelation of what light is referring to here, is that even what we understand as matter or the physical universe is nothing but photons that are gathered together, what we call the material universe, what we call the reality that we can see, hear, touch, taste, smell, hear. The reality that is nothing, it's nothing but light that is gravitationally captured and brought together to form an essence. And that essence might be the image that appears as Robin Michael Beach or Dr. Bill Handshoe or a tree out in the yard. So what the Lord is really telling us and revealing us to us here is that it's this word of I am, Dr. Bill, that defines, or what I like to use this so this word sticks in people's head. It's that light is the same thing as God saying, this is me imaging you. I'm imaging, the word of I am images you. It images you because it creates the expression that is recognized as who you are. And when he says to us that his passion is to remain true to that word, what he's literally telling us, Dr. Bill, is that from the eternal time before time, if you will, that my passion produced an image that was not imperfect, but that I have tried and tested the blueprint of your design, and still to this day, Genesis 1:31 in the mind of God is true. And he said, it is very good, meaning that everything that he created us to be and the image that he made us after his likeness was not imperfect. It was not blown up. It was not a mistake, in other words. It wasn't. So even what we understand as quote unquote fallen is not something that was a predetermined object of original sin, but it was the product of man's disqualification of his own self, leaving the course of life that Abba had designed for us. So even in that context of what you and I would talk about as soteriology, it's absolutely very, very poignant and definitive in who we are and how we see ourselves. Because so often, Dr. Bill, we have seen ourselves from the light or in the light of fallen, broken, mistake, and those are all just context of religiosity that just quite frankly are just not true. It's just not scriptural. It's just not how he defines us. And one of the things that I think is, and you and I have had think about how many conversations we've had along this line, Dr. Bill, that one of the things that we have to define again is what does he say is true? What does he say about us? And let's make his objectivism the word of faith by which that we base everything on, and not just some passive subjective experience that we understand to be this present evil age, Galatians 1:4, which he came to deliver us from.
Right. And that's the thing is I find myself saying everyone has gone through this, but that's not necessarily true. I'm sure there are some out there who haven't, but most of us, or many of us, have started out influenced by someone's human experience, or a whole plethora of people's human experience, and what they perceive as God and they perceive as the pitfalls of this journey. And I know that I did. I started out with the Adam mind, not because I had the Adam mind, but because I was taught that I had the Adam mind.
Yes.
So we think in that way that we're not, that we are struggling and trying to get close to God, and that we're not separated from Him, when in reality, the truth is we were never created in a separated position from God. We just felt as if we were, so we operated from that arena. And I will even say this: I think it's even possible that people slip back into that at some points in time, some areas, because they're trying to become established in truth, so they don't ever have to revisit that again. One of the things I'm noticing here, and I've kind of gotten lost on where we are, but in Psalm 1 verse 2 in the Net Bible, he said, instead he finds pleasure in obeying the Lord's commands. He meditates on his commands or his law day and night.
Yes.
Yeah. Please talk to us some more.
Yeah, well, as like you said, one of the translators' footnotes there, and like we talked about concerning that day and night there, to meditate on the revelation of light day and night means to meditate 24/7 on that which is good and delightful. And that's what I define when we talk about that, Dr. Bill. That's what I define as ABBA's objectivism. In other words, what he says is true based on, is God love? Yes, God is love. So God being love, then God has those things that are good and pleasant and perfect. And so when we talk about meditating on the light of day and night, that like Ephesians and is brought out here in the footnote, Ephesians 1:18 says that the period of enlightenment day that has to do with a definitive time when revelation might be pouring into us, and we might be able to see clearly, hear clearly, know clearly. But night, darkness, literally represents a time of what we would think of as obscurity. So both when we have the light of insight and when we even seem to be in the dark, that Abba's word, whether we are in times of uncertainty, we'll call obscurity uncertainty, or whether we're in times of vast clarity, even we feel like that we really know where we're going, what we're doing, what's happening, all of those things. What Abba is telling us here is that at this place of recognition, that when we meditate on the I amness that he is, and that he has intimately, not just simply shared with us, but that we were literally birthed out of, James 1:18, that we were birthed out of that intimacy, out of that deep desire. That boulomai is the Greek word, actually, that defines that that deepest, innermost desire and longing of God, that when we realize that that is what we find as recognition, that it doesn't light night or day, either one of those times, we're not so quick to overreact to the good times or overreact to the bad times. We're not; those things aren't what determine the stature and the content of our character at that moment. But it's literally who he says we are that determines who we are, and obviously subsequently how we respond from that point. Paul said it this way: for I have learned, no matter what state that I am in, no matter what state that I'm in, good, bad, lacking, prosperous, no matter what state I'm in, I have learned. I have been trained by this place and this recognition of sonship to be content, to know contentment, and to know peace, and to know solidarity, and to know continuity in these very trying moments or these very prosperous moments, either one of them. I've learned that no matter what state that I'm in, to be content. And when we understand sonship and understand the definitive recognition of our Father, it's not so much, Dr. Bill, that we recognize it, but it is. That's very important. But the fact of the matter is that we embrace his recognition. Because there's days, I mean, Dr. Bill, that we don't feel good, that we go through trying times, that we go through pictures of discontentment or physical ailment, or there's all sorts of just vast arenas of what we could consider to be discontenting or disconcerting in life. But those aren't the things that define who we are. When we learn to embrace Abba's objectivism, in that I am who he says I am because the I am said I am, then I no longer have to be subject, or the scriptural terminology would be slave, to this present evil age. You're muted, Dr. Bill. Somehow you got muted. There we go.
That's exactly the thing right there, is when we don't, or at least at times when we can't seem to get our thinking straightened out, we become a slave to those thoughts. You know, I found out that the Greek word for body actually means slave, and it's only a slave to what we actually believe in our soul, or at least we've been persuaded to believe. And it's a shame. You know, I was in a meeting not too long ago, and someone came up to me, and in their house, I was respectful. I wasn't a lot of things I could have said, but I was told that we're from Adam, and there's nothing we can do about it. And of course, the things that I study, I absolutely wanted to respond to that, but I played the kind role, and some people would think that's wrong. I think it's absolutely right to be respectful unless I'm absolutely asked, what are your thoughts about this? However, the point is that you had made a statement and said the law of liberty, of the law of the spirit, is the law of the spirit of life, or the spirit of life, the provision, protection, and substance of the Father's house, of Sabbath abundance, where the recognized Son may go in and out with no fear nor anxiety or worry. I think about being created in like I said, I've kind of lost track of where we're at, but I think about how that we came into this life, let's say this realm, in the perfect law of liberty, staring at the perfect law of liberty, living in the perfect law of liberty, came here upright. but because the human persuasion or the human experience, we walked away from the mirror and forgot exactly who we were.
Yes. Yes.
And when you forget who you are, you absolutely can become influenced by so many other things. So yeah, I think it's so important to listen to teachings like you're sharing tonight, because the truth is Abba has instructions about us, about life, um, and there's so much freedom. And here's a statement. I don't know if this I'm pulling this out or if this is later, but in freedom he finds his place alongside of Abba, talking about sons of God,
Yes.
in the inheritance provided by recognized sons. I think that's important that we catch on to that, that we get a hold of that. So go ahead and talk to us some more of that, please.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, that's literally what and we'll start getting more into the verse here. These are some things that we kind of talking about there, guys. They're just kind of some things that it's been a few weeks since Dr. Bill and I had kind of delved into this subject. So that was kind of just some foundational thoughts there about where we were coming from and where we're going. And so as Dr. Bill had said a while ago, chapter 1 here of Psalm 1 is it's what we would refer to, if we were talking academically, as a antithetical parallelism.
Mm-hmm.
Now that word antithetical is it's where we get the word antithesis from. But what I say, and most of the time when I'm teaching this to make it a little bit clearer in our language, is a contrast. It's a contrasting parallelism. What it's revealing is, once again, a recognized son who understands that he is righteous, and that understands that righteousness is a gift that is born into him from his father. It's not something that is acquired by behavior or action. Righteousness is that which is born into one. And so the fallen one then, literally, and this is where that some people break down in this, a fallen one is anyone who chooses to make a a formation of acceptance or a rule of order out of what they do as opposed to who they are. Literally, the minute that we do that, and this is where the context of what we talk about religion falls into this very thing, is that we try to use that to define who we are as opposed to who the Father says we are. So Psalm 1 is drawing a picture for us of this antithetical or contrasting parallel that shows us a picture of what a fallen one or disqualified. And once again, I want to make this very clear. This fallen one is not because they have been disembodied or distanced by Abba. The fallen one has chosen this path for themselves. They've chosen this themselves and put themselves on this road according to what the psalm is teaching us. So when we talk about the righteous one, the recognized son, we're literally talking about one who understands who he belongs to, where he came from, and who has designed, if you will, the blueprint of his life for him. And that would be, according to the word here, Abba. So if we start kind of breaking this down point by point, then, number one, a recognized son in Psalm 1:2, he's telling us this, that the one of righteousness has no fellowship with the vain imaginations that with deceptive resolve advise one to act in disagreement with Abba's design and intent. Has no fellowship with the vain imaginations. So I think one of the things that we have to point out from the very beginning, what does it mean to have a vain imagination? What does it mean to accept this lie as truth? And the very beginning of that, Dr. Bill, is that we begin to fellowship, if you will, that we begin to listen to, give attention to our own thought and sentiment and opinion concerning our very lives, as opposed to what Abba is saying about us. And those imaginations, they lead us to this place that is defined as deceptive resolve. So, in other words, we accept, another way to say that, Dr. Bill, is we accept a lie as the truth. We define that which is untrue and call it true, even to the point that we would grapple over it, fight for it. And that is what leads us to act in what we term as this disagreement with Abba's design and intent. We begin to hold on to those things that are untrue as true, and then we begin to design and form our own presupposed realities around those very things. And what happens is, in our minds, in our own mindsets, in our own souls, those things become very, very real. But that doesn't make them that way. That doesn't make them true. That's what we literally define as that Adam mind that you and I talk about.
Yeah, because I mean it's clear that Adam, um, and everybody watching, in spite of how you view Adam and Eve, I've heard so many different versions of that scenario. I would just say this, that whatever God had did and said in Adam, in the creation of who he was as a person there in the garden, he had a desire to be more, to seek for more, to become more, and thus found himself disagreeing with God in that he ate from the fruit of a tree, which the tree, let's face it. I mean, I don't think there was ever supposed to be a choice between one or the other. Just choose God. I mean,
Right.
before there was the choosing of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil or the tree of life, there was just God's visitations in the daytime, and I don't think daytime's necessarily a picture of just day or night. It was just God shows up and they fellowshipped. But I
Right.
think that to believe, to eat from the fruit of a wrong mindset, you then become deceived, and you feel so alone and so separated from everything that God says you are, that God comes on the scene and says, "Hey, Adam, where are you?" And Adam says, "I hid because I was naked." And it's so obvious how Father feels about his creation, because he comes along and says, "Hey, who told you that? Where did you get that from?" Well,
Yes.
that wasn't some evil snake in a tree or anything else. That was literally the serpent voice. The word serpent there, by the way, in the Hebrew, is refers to a hissing. And sometimes there's this hissing voice within the mind that will lead you to a belief that is not what's true of you. And that's exactly, I think, what happened with them. And so, yeah, it's believing something. And I think that's the thing that everybody still struggles with. And I say everybody, a lot of people still struggle with. in that every now and then something will arise within where we will feel as if we are separated from God in some way, and that becomes this cog in the wheel, or this wrench in the wheel, the machinery, as it were, that really becomes disruptive in our thinking. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I think, you know, Dr. Bill, one of the greatest uh, obstacles, I guess would be a good word, that we have yet to overcome. Uh, and I'm going to say something here that I think is definitely a point of recognition that we need to, that maybe at least have some dialogue about, is that so often I have heard people talk about, oh, we just got to get back to the book of Acts. We've just got to go back to the book of Acts and do, just as long as we do whatever they did, we'll be fine. We're going to get what they got.
Mm-hmm.
When I don't think that sometimes that we realize that even in Acts chapter 1, do you really, most people don't catch the fact that even the disciples, who we know as the apostles themselves, thought, and this is very, very relevant to this conversation, if people understand how to associate, that they literally ask him, Dr. Bill, so is now the time that you're going to restore the kingdom back to Israel?
Mm-hmm.
His answer to them is, you don't understand the times of the seasons, and those things aren't for you to know. Those things are in the Father's hand.
Mm-hmm.
And once again, Jesus is looking at them right then, saying, in your infantile incapacity, you're not even asking the right question. He's kind about it, but he's still telling them, you guys, you've been with me 3.5 years and you don't even know the single first question to ask right yet. And so a lot of what we think of is being a good idea, like going back to the book of Acts or whatever. What if that was just like the very infancy stage of who Abba is growing us up to be? And what if we're actually globally progressing and moving, and we're farther ahead now than we were then? Because they were still stuck in the idea of the redundancy and ritualism of religion. They were stuck there. And they didn't understand that the context that Jesus was defining for them was not the formation of another type of religion, but it was the freedom. Literally, James, once again, the book of James, the law of perfect liberty, it was the freedom to live according to a righteousness, a law, if you will, that went beyond behavioral modification and brought mankind up, or watch this, ascended them to the knowing of what it was to live face to face with him,
Mm-hmm.
in, through, and to Jesus Christ. And I still believe, and I can't help but get away from this thought. And I've tried to many times. I've tried to shoot holes in it, but I can't find it. I can't find the holes. Is that light being progressive? We're literally moving on according to the light that God is continually revealing to us, that Abba is continually leading to us. That's heard. Yeah, and even I'll just look down here, and Dr. Kay Fairchild, who I love and respect so much, said, why would people go back to Acts when Jesus said we would do greater than he did? That's very simple logic there, that we begin to understand that recognition, just like Paul said in Philippians 2, recognition with our face-to-face relationship with Abba is not something that we have to despise. It's not something that we have to try to cast down with false humility, but that's the very thing that we should be embracing right now. Even though knowing that we are wearing that in the time of the skin suit, we are here to serve one another and serve him. But we don't have to be ashamed of the equality of relationship and origin that he's brought us into. And that can only come by the context of this very conversation of recognition. That word recognition is massive. I mean, it's massive. When we begin to talk, we can use words like awareness, nearness, cognizance. I mean, there's lots of different words and nomenclature that we can type onto it that mean the same thing, but it has to do with the absolute nearness of what it is to live in a relationship, to where that, like Psalm chapter 1, verse 1 in the Illumination Translation, which I brought out, that the recognized son, the one of righteousness, refuses to attempt to create his own dwelling place outside of Abba's house, where those who congregate in derision make mockery of their original created value by aligning themselves with deception as truth. So the only way that we're going to leave this present evil age of deception is, once again, to lay aside anything, like Paul said in Philippians, once again, anything that defined him according to his Hebraism or his behavior or any of those things, that he laid those things aside and he was laying hold of that for which he had been laid hold of. And that literally right there is the definition of what we're talking about when we talk about recognition.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, you know, we've roughly got about 15 minutes. I would like for you to take this and just, because I know you're going to need to put a cap on this. There are several statements that you've made, several scriptures you use, and I think I'll just grab one of the statements and let you run this out however
Yes,
you'd
sir.
like
Okay.
to. It says the son is literally the builder of the family name slash house. The New Testament uses the picture of an heir, firstly, of Christ, and then of the Christian. Christ is the heir to all things, Hebrews 1 verse 2, and through the union of co-inclusion in him, believers also become heirs. That's quite a statement.
Yeah. Yeah. So the word bane, where we get the word son from in Hebrew, literally means a builder of the family house, a builder of the family house. And there is a natural parallel here that goes on, that you can see, that flows out of Psalm 1 and Psalm 1:1 and Psalm 1:2, in that the Eternal Abba's instruction of life, that is continual liberty. So when we understand and begin to accept this recognition, this state of recognition we talk about, this is the very place that we actually find freedom. And the freedom, eleutheria, which is the Greek word for freedom or liberty that he's talking about, is literally that inheritance that we have been given. So first of all, we have to understand eleutheria. Eleutheria, what that word means, it doesn't mean freedom from the law. It means freedom outside the law, Dr. Bill, or above the law. And now, some might be saying, hold on, Robin, what does that mean? Let me use this for an example. When I first started playing stringed instruments, Dr. Bill, when I was 5, 6 years old, I would watch people and I would just simply imitate what they did. As I got to be 10 or 12 years old, I got a little bit more proficient in understanding, we'll just say, the fretboard or the neck of a guitar, right? I got a little more proficient in that. And so I was able to understand what we would call changes or chord structures. And I learned what we call the Nashville numbering system, which some people on here that are musically inclined might know what I'm talking about. And it's a way, instead of using chords, you use numbers. Mm-hmm. And a lot of studio musicians use the Nashville numbering system in chord chart. But even as well as one can play or sound playing, doing that, there comes a time in one's life, Dr. Bill, when they have been so exercised. I'm talking Hebrews 5:13 now. They have been so trained that literally they can just hear, like now, just to be quite frank, I can be put into a situation where I've never heard the song, and I can just go, okay, just play, and I'll play. And I can just start playing. I don't have to have heard the song. I can just start playing. That's Eleutheria. That is when you come to a point in time in your life to where that you are able to operate in a liberty, that liberty represents or might be expressed in what we would understand as mastery. So it's always been Abba's intention that his instruction in life would bring us to the point of that kind of liberty. That it's not so much a question anymore, Dr. Bill, of every single step, Lord, where do I go? What do I do? Sure, we're always going to seek the Lord's advice and counsel. But after we have been trained, right? After we've been trained for a while, we have been exercised to the point to where that we are able to literally, effortlessly, without regard to necessary conscious law keeping, that we just understand the framework in which we are engaged, and we are able just to operate smoothly, efficiently, proficiently. That's Eleutheria. And it says that his imaginations, when we're talking about the righteous one, it says that his imaginations focus entirely on what Abba knows to be true. And these lead him, once again, Psalm 1:1, and these lead him on a straight path in the light of day, as opposed to the spiral stairway descending into darkness. Assuredly, of a truth, the righteous one's desire finds peace and joy as that which is valuable. So when we talk about Romans 14:17, for the kingdom of God does not consist of food and drink, but righteousness, peace, joy, and the Holy Spirit. This is simply what we would call an Eleutheria parallel. He's telling us right here of what it looks like in this parallel of how a recognized son literally operates according to righteousness that was given to him or her by their father as that thing. Now, this is the key to it all, Bill, is that thing which is the utmost of value. A righteous one puts righteousness and the singularity of what they consider valuable and beneficial on the recognition of their father as themselves being born from him. So one of the great obstacles that we have in this time, I truly believe, Dr. Bill, is to be able to cancel out, negate, nullify this idea of false humility in celebrating and applauding even this idea, once again, of false humility, of where we believe that it's actually good for us to sense this distance and this delay, to where that we feel like holiness is to where that we're trying to constantly get to this place, to where that God, to where that Abba himself, God the Creator, says that this is where we start from. This is our reference point. This is our home. That's what Psalm 1:1 is telling us when he says he finds his place alongside. He finds his place alongside of Abba in the inheritance provided him. And what is that inheritance? That inheritance is absolute union. That inheritance is the knowledge, recognition, understanding, and eleutheria, freedom, mastery to live within that context, undisturbed, unhindered, to where that we are untethered to this weight of this age that would try to keep us earthbound in our perceptions and our conclusions and how we see ourselves, and ultimately, which leads to how we see one another, and ultimately, really, truly, how we see him.
Yeah, absolutely. It becomes the influencer of how we see, how we understand and comprehend things. Um, I'm just going to go ahead and let you wrap this up. I mean, take it where you want to, as long as you want. It's cool.
So, yeah, I'll just be. I've said really. I think that one of the things that, literally going back to some of the first things that we talked about, is, and like you said, like the name of your new show, Dr. Bill, it's a journey of discovery. Literally what we have to focus on, and that which is in front of us, is so powerful, and it's so poignant, and it's so surreal almost, that I think that almost one of the things that we have to do right now is truly just unhinge ourselves from every idea and every perspective that we have ever held dear as the context of our relationship with Abba and with one another. And that we begin to ask him to reveal what it is to us, to open up the eyes of our understanding, so that we would be enlightened, to know the hope of our calling, or to know parakaleo, to know the nearness of the name by which we have been designed with.
Mm-hmm. The Net Bible you put in here, the translation you used, it talks in such a positive sense. I've never heard, and I'm just being fair about this, I've never heard any other translation look at this verse that way, and I just flipped something and it went away from me. But Ephesians 1 is what I was looking at. Let me see here. Yeah, Ephesians 1:18, and it says it this way: "Sense the eyes of your heart."
Yes.
Or really the eyes of your understanding. This was cardia, mind,
Yes.
will, and intellect, emotions. Since the eyes of your understanding have been enlightened, not will be, not should be, not I pray for this, but since they have, so you can know what is the hope of his calling, what is the wealth of his glorious inheritance in the saints. I think that we run into this more than once, so this happens again and again, that there's an inheritance in the saints. You could say there's an inheritance in the creation of God.
Yes.
It would almost imply that God knew what he was doing from the beginning.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I once again, we have so much focused on trying to re-image and reform the creation. And he's trying to tell us, look, in Jesus Christ, I I tested that
Hmm.
and I deemed it fine. It's not that's not what needs to be changed. What needs to be changed is the way that you see me and ultimately see yourself. And I mean, we can really kind of look at this entire subject, and especially the subject of sonship, when it comes to that very thing, is we have to, if anything has to be reformed or relearned, it's how we see him and how we see ourselves.
Oh, for
And
sure.
that's why that he sent the word to become flesh.
Sure. Absolutely. And, Jesus, who always was, always will be supernatural, became visible for our sake.
Yes.
Not because he needed to, but it was for our sake. And I think it was for the convincing of mankind that who he is, and ultimately shows them who they are.
Yes.
Wow. Well, I wish back when we did part one, this could have been done all at once, but it wasn't. So, folks, you can go back to YouTube, World Bible School Media, and you can find part one, and you can find everything. Look at pull up the playlist on Kingdom Dynamics, and you can find Bishop Robin Beach. You can find him there in many broadcasts. Both on Fridays and Tuesdays and Thursdays, and you can find out more about this particular subject, and it can be a blessing to you. Also, you can find, and I don't know whether I'm advertising this right, but Michael Robin Beach on Facebook. You can see his regular teachings and posts. They have a website. There's so many ways that you can get a hold of the teachings that comes forth from this man. And another thing you can do is enroll as a student in WBSU,
Yes.
and very most likely be taking some of his classes. So um, want to thank you for taking the time to be on. I know that what others don't know, and some of the challenges you've had, uh, and uh, and that still you were able to be on tonight. I really appreciate you, brother.
Amen. Well, thank you. It's an honor to be here. I love this. I love, I love you. I love Dr. Faye, and I love our family and the people that we engage with and are continually as the growth of that family is happening. I just feel so honored and to be able to be a part of that, and uh, it's beautiful in his eyes, and it's beautiful in my eyes, and I truly am grateful. Anything that I have, I love being able to be with and share with God's people.
Yes, absolutely. Well, again, thank you for being on. Everybody tonight, please click like and share. Let other people know about this broadcast. In the morning, we're scheduled to be on with Apostle Daniel Williams, Friday morning conversations.
All right, good.
And he's always got some some preach in him, and he
Yeah.
can stir you up and excite you. So
Amen. Amen.
have a great evening. We'll see everybody then. We love you. Bye bye, everyone.
Thank you, guys.